Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel Learn to Code with Noob. This is my video number 2. Today we are going to learn something about configuration changes in Android. Awesome, so let's jump right into it. Today I am going to cover these 4 topics related to configuration changes. So these 4 topics are: what are configuration changes? How configuration changes play a role in Android activity lifecycle? So those of you who haven't watched my Android activity lifecycle video, please watch the video. I've posted the link in the description below. So the next 2 points are: configuration changes are your friend and what developers shouldn't do to avoid configuration changes. So what are configuration changes? Configuration changes are basically the changes happens in the configuration of a device. Well, that's genius, right? Well, you guys can say me that, hey, I know that, but tell me something which I don't know about it. Well, to be honest, this is the actual definition of configuration change. Changes which happen in the configuration of a device. So what do I mean by configuration? So there are various configurations in the device which can change, and it can change because the user took some action. It can change if the device or operating system in itself took some action. So some of the basic configuration changes are screen orientation, multi-window, language changes, accessibility changes, and theme changes. So I will jump right into what is screen orientation. So I have this emulator over here. So let me just pull up my emulator and open this app. So this is a basic Play Store app, right? So the screen orientation is if you rotate your device. I'll just roll this thing over here. So you rotate your device. This is the screen orientation. This means this device screen orientation got changed and the configuration is changed. The other thing is multi-window. So when I say multi-window is if I want to open an app in a multi-window, just tap over here. I'll go to split screen and boom, here is my multi-window. And I can slide this over here, slide this right here. Here is my multi-window. I will explain you later in the video why these changes are helpful. Most of the people know it, but for some of you who don't know it, I will explain it in the video later. Now the other changes are language changes. So for example, if you go over here in the setting, right, and you select system languages, and for example, right now I have added my native language Hindi. So if I change my language preference from English to Hindi, you will notice this activity, its language has been changed to Hindi. And if I go back, everything will be in Hindi. And not only this, if I minimize, open the launcher. Now, every app icon which supports this Hindi language, it will show you the Hindi text. Now, the other thing is accessibility changes. Let me switch back to English. There you go. Now let's go to accessibility changes. Accessibility. Now accessibility changes are of many kinds. So for example, I can change the font size of a device like this. Now if I go back, you will see you're seeing the larger fonts. If I also bump up the display size, now you will see the things in the screen are much bigger. Let me change these back to what they were before. So yeah, so these are the accessibility changes. Now last but not the least, the theme changes, which comes actually under accessibility changes. So for example, if you change your theme, like dark theme, so if I change it over here, so you can see the theme is changed in the whole device. Like my launcher is all black and the icon's contrast color has been changed. And if I switch back to my normal theme, you can see everything background is white. So these are some of the basic configuration changes happen in Android. All right, let's move on to my next topic, how configuration changes play a role in Android activity lifecycle. So let's jump straight into Android Studio. People who don't know what Android Studio is, it's basically a framework or an IDE, means integrated development environment to build Android apps. So the reason why I'm explaining all this configuration changes is because it has some relation with lifecycle changes and lifecycle Android activity lifecycle, which I have explained in my video 1. So please check that video out if you don't understand what activity is and one what activity lifecycle events are. All right. So let's just walk you through when the configuration changes happen, what lifecycle changes the activity goes through. So for example, a simple example is I just rotate this device. So here is my sample application, which I shared with you in my last video, and I have that application installed in my emulator. So when I rotate the device, you can see my activity goes all the way from paused, stopped, destroy, created, started, and resumed. So what does that mean? It destroys the activity and recreates it. So whenever the configuration changes happen, Android, our OS, basically kills the whole activity and recreate it. So that's the major change or life cycle change which activity goes through whenever it goes through the configuration changes. So if I rotate this activity again, there you go. You can see again it goes from pause, stop, destroy, created, started, and resumed. All right. So then my next configuration change thing is multi-window. So now I will just add some spaces in my log so you can see it more clearly. So I will tap over here and go, and my activity will go into split screen. So notice now the activity is again destroyed, recreated, and then it is in the pause state. So pause state means the activity is still partially visible. And now I will open any other app, for example a settings app. Now you can see my activity is resumed. Now let's see what happens if I expand the window of this activity. So here I will just slide it right down below, and now you can see my activity is again going through pause, stop, destroyed, and recreates itself again, created, started, and resumed. And my next configuration change now is the language change. So language change is pretty a bit hard to describe with logs, but I will try my best. So now if you go to, like, just open the settings app, I'll just go over here and open the settings, and I will go all the way down, accessibility, no, not accessibility, system, language. Now if I change my language to Hindi, right, now I will just add some spaces in my log, and my activity will be resumed. So now you can see system destroys the activity and recreates it. So the same life cycle changes happen. Now this same thing will happen when you do accessibility changes, when you do theme changes. The same changes will happen in this activity life cycle. Now I will also tell you in later part in the video that how developers actually avoid it, and why we should not do that. All right, so my next thing to explain is, why does Android recreate the activity when configuration changes happen? So I will try to explain this in a very short way. It is because the activity can adapt to new configurations by auto-loading the resources matching the configuration. So what do I mean by that? I will show you in a code shortly. All right, so let's go to our same sample application. So over here you can see, here is basically my screen, and here is one button, there is one text component, and here is one image view, right? So what I want to do is, so when I rotate this device, I want this text, this button, text, and this image to be centered. So right now, if I rotate this thing, I want it to be centered. So what I do is, I I will add a configuration file which is for a landscape orientation. So you don't have to know anything about this. You just basically, what you need to know is this: here is your activity, and here is one file which says, hey, load the UI which is in this file, right? And here is another file with the same name, and it says, hey, when the device changes the orientation to landscape, load this file with this UI. So now if I rotate my device, see, right now it is still not in center, right? So you can see, like, everything is left aligned. Now I will run my code again with this configuration. Let's see what happens. All right, so now if I rotate my device, here you can see now everything is centered. So what Android did when it actually recreated the activity, it said, okay, hey, what are the resource files, or what is the UI I want to load when this device is in landscape? So I told Android operating system that, hey, load this UI in which these three things are centered. And that's one of the reason why Android actually recreates the whole activity. All right, so now moving on to the next thing, which is configuration changes are your friend. So let me tell you that handling configuration changes is really good for your app. And even if you are not a developer, and if you are basically outsourcing some Android developer, and you really want to know what are these configuration changes and how these can benefit your app, so here are some of the positive points. So for the first thing is, it basically gives the user the flexibility to use your app in any way they want. So what I mean by that is, so in any way they want, let me take the example of this Google Play Store. So let's say while using the Google Play Store app, I want to download Twitter app, but I also want to do, I also want to actually do some map navigation. So what I'll do is I'll split screen, right? And I will do map navigation. So the apps who basically don't support multi-window, and if there is a good use case for that, then users are stuck, right? So moving on to the next thing, by supporting language changes, you can grow your audience. All right. So what I mean by that is, so if your app support language changes, so for example, I am a native speaker in India and I want to use the Play Store app, and my language, if it's set to Hindi, which I will do it right now, and if I go to Play Store app, yeah, so you can see some of the things are now in Hindi, so the user can easily understand it, and good opportunity to grow your audience. And the next thing, by supporting accessibility changes, your app can also be used by people who have disabilities. So if the people are who are like vision impaired, like they can't see the small text, they can easily go to the settings, right? I can easily go to settings, go back, then I will go to, sorry, I will just change my language first so that you guys are not confused. So I'll just change it to English, and that's it. There we go. If I go back, let's say I want to change the accessibility settings. I want to just make my text bigger because I am that kind of a user who likes to see uh, big text. Simple. So now I go to my Play Store app. Oops. So I will open the Play Store app. Just taking a good amount of time. Yeah, so now you can see like these texts are a bit bigger than before. So that is good. So my next point is, by supporting theme changes like dark theme, it reduces power usage by a significant amount. It also improves visibility for the users with low vision. So now I am using this dark mode. So Google Play Store, it is very good that it supports dark mode. So for example, if I want to read something or read something about this app or explore this app at night, it is not straining to my eyes. So I will have good uh, good audience, basically good user base who will use this app, or who will use my app if I support dark theme. So those are some of the very important changes, and it basically shows us how configuration changes are really good for our app, and how each and every Android developer should think about it to support these changes. All right, so moving to my last and final section of this video is what developers shouldn't do to avoid configuration changes. All right, so let's jump in right into our sample app. So Now I want to explain you how developers avoid configuration changes. So the common way to do it is basically developers can go to like Android manifest file, and there is one line of code which they write. So those of you who don't know about this, they can just understand it like there is a flag which developers write and which basically says that, hey, Android OS, just I want to handle for this activity, I want to handle all the configuration changes which are like orientation, change in the screen size, change in the screen layout, keyboard, and there are also many other uh, configuration changes which can occur. So so basically over here I am saying whatever the configuration changes occur, I will handle on my own. So now what happens is, if I have done this, now if I'll rotate the device, nothing will happen. Now you can see, even though I have my layout land activity main file, like this configuration file which says to load landscape UI, it will not do that, because here we are saying the Android OS should, that we ourselves will handle it. So that's how developers avoid it. And the only reason behind that is because they don't want to handle any lifecycle changes. So let me show you this quick thing too. So for example, I'll just clean it, clean the logs. So if I rotate it right now, you will see there are no logs. Like the activity is not recreating, it's not destroying, nothing is happening. So there are no logs. And if I do the configuration changes again, there are no logs. So this is basically what happens when you define that manifest flag, which in my opinion we shouldn't do it, because then our application is not flexible enough to get the changes. So for example, there are many new changes coming up in Android, for example foldables, and there are other changes too, especially foldables. So if your Android app supports like the screen orientation and configuration changes, you can, like the you have very less work to do to support foldables. You still have some work, but less work to do to support foldables. All right, so yeah, so this is in short what developers shouldn't do it. So that is my final section. Thank you guys. Thanks for watching guys. If you like this video, please don't forget to click on the like button. If you don't like this video, please mention why in the comment down below. Like, share and subscribe. Keep learning.